Representative Mary Gay Scanlon of the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Good morning, Representative.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for taking time for us.
Happy to be here.
Okay.
Talk about one of my favorite subjects.
Oh, yeah, yes. Right. Well, you tweeted the Trump presidency revealed serious vulnerabilities in our democracy, vulnerabilities that can be exploited again if we don't act. I'm gladly joined Adam Schiff in supporting the Protecting Our Democracy Act to prevent future abuses of power. I count myself among the people, Representative, who hopes that Merrick Garland, prosecutes the past abuses of power that we're seeing in this, Eastman sedition memo and others. But this really is sort of Trump-proofing the presidency, isn't it? It's just norms and laws we never thought would be broken to this degree, right?
Right. Well, it's sort of a Watergate moment. After the revelations of Watergate and the abuses of the Nixon administration, Congress had to enact a series of laws and reforms because that administration had crossed lines that we never thought would be crossed. And here we are today with an administration that really just ran over every guardrail it could find, whether it was attacking the courts or the press or the inspectors general or attacking our election officials and elections themselves.
Yeah, well, exactly. So let's go through it just so we know what's in it. It would make it harder for presidents to offer or bestow pardons in situations that raise suspicion of corruption, refuse to respond to oversight subpoenas, spend or secretly freeze funds contrary to congressional appropriations, fire inspectors general, retaliate against whistleblowers, among many other. Obviously, it is sort of a point-by-point rebuke of everything the Trump administration did, isn't it?
Well, it is, but I think what's notable here is you've got two choices after something like this happens. If your party's in power, you can say, well, they got away with it. Let's see what we can do.
Right.
Or you can say, this was wrong, and I don't care who's in office. We don't want this to ever happen again. And that's what the Protecting Our Democracy Act does. It tries to reestablish the guardrails that are necessary to have a fair, honest, constitutionally based government.
Right. And so Chairman Schiff said our democracy turns out to be much more fragile than we understood. This is an effort to put into law that which we thought was already mandatory. And of course, previously Republican senators have supported significant components of this. But once again, in these unusual times, I have to ask, what are the chances of this getting passed, of Republicans supporting this now, even though they're on record supporting many components of it?
Well, not only are they on record as supporting it, but they drafted large portions of it. Look, this argument about the fragility of our Constitution is not new. I'm from Philadelphia. We wrote the Constitution there. I wasn't actually there at the time.
Name dropper.
But when Ben Franklin was approached, as they're writing the Constitution, he's approached by a citizen outside Independence Hall. They said, what kind of a government is it? He said, it's a republic if you can keep it. That requires an engaged, active citizenry. It requires people of goodwill who are, there to serve the public, not their own private political or pecuniary interests. So, for centuries, that's been the norm, but we've seen, particularly during the last administration, that a lot of that didn't seem to matter. So we need to enact a lot of the provisions that are in this bill. And you mentioned the pardons up front. The founders actually had a debate about pardons and the offering of pardons to a president's political allies who did illegal things on his behalf. And they said, oh, that would be an impeachable offense. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that Republican Senate that you mentioned did not find that to be an impeachable defense, despite all the evidence that it was done with corrupt purpose.
Yeah.
And, here we are. So this bill would enact that as something that's illegal and could not be done so easily in the future.
Well, speaking of a coup, I just wanted to listen. Chairman Schiff yesterday on Nicole Wallace. Just take a listen.
Singer is saying something when he calls this memo that Woodward and Costa report on a blueprint for a coup. Is the Select Committee investigating a conspiracy to commit a coup?
Yes, and I think Adam is exactly right.
Representative, don't you feel like the DOJ, obviously no less than Lawrence Tribe and many others have said, I don't see, this is basically a sedition memo, this John Eastman, it's a blueprint. right, for how they were going to subvert our democracy and overthrow our government. I mean, in your opinion, doesn't the DOJ also have to be involved with this?
Well, I don't know that they aren't.
Right.
They certainly are pursuing a lot of different avenues here, but absolutely Congress has to be involved. I mean, Congress is a co-equal branch. Some of my colleagues would argue that since it's the Article I branch, it is the preeminent branch. So Congress absolutely has to be involved in investigating this. And, certainly the information that's come out about this memo and some of the other meetings that were happening on the eve of the January 6th insurrection are extremely concerning, because it does increasingly appear that this was a very serious attempt to overthrow our government.
Yeah. Representative, we keep saying, I think if you don't punish a coup, it is ongoing. And in my opinion, This is ongoing. You talked about what's happening in Pennsylvania on Twitter. You said Pennsylvania Republicans' fishing expedition to seize private sensitive information from millions of voters is absurd and could be a violation of federal voting and election laws. So you're asking the DOJ civil rights investigation to investigate that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's correct. And certainly the former president started attacking Pennsylvania's election system as soon as it appeared likely that he might lose Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to get your take on Senator Warren saying sort of just that yesterday.
I do believe it's time to call the Republicans out over this. Are you kidding me on the debt ceiling? When Donald Trump was president and needed to raise the debt ceiling over and over, Democrats said, yep, we get it. And what are we trying to raise the debt ceiling for now? To cover the debts that were incurred during the Trump administration.
Yes.
I just, again, we're in an unprecedented moment again, right? That they will, I mean, it's hard to really understate how catastrophic it would be to blow through the debt ceiling on our economy.
Well, I think we've seen a number of economists say just how catastrophic it would be. To the world economy, the U.S. economy, that it would plunge us into a recession. We're at a point, we're trying to recover from the pandemic and the closures that were necessary for public health. This is not the time to throw, a monkey wrench into our economy. And again, it's moving the goalposts. It's okay if I do it, but forget it if, someone else has to step up to the plate.
Yeah.
It's just a complete abdication of responsibility.
Well, Jen Psaki said I was going to bring up police reform as well. She just said Republicans rejected reforms that even the previous president had supported and refused to engage on key issues that many law enforcement were willing to address. And so we're disappointed. The president is disappointed. I mean, I guess it's not surprising to a lot of us on the outside, but obviously the president had a number of meetings yesterday with moderates and the Progressive Caucus. Where do you think we're at with the infrastructure bill and the reconciliation bill?
I think we're at the point where there's a lot of negotiation out there to get the bill across the finish line, the bills. There is broad agreement about much of it, but there's a limit on how much can be included in the reconciliation bill. And so there's got to be, some horse trading and negotiation about that. Right. But I think there's broad agreement within the caucus that we have to get this done.
Yeah, and as I said,
I look forward to it.
As I said earlier, if Nancy Pelosi can't land this plane, the plane cannot be landed. I mean, she seemed calm yesterday, but she always does, doesn't she?
I think that's right, but I think generally there's a sense of optimism. I mean, a lot to work out still, but negotiation by tantrum doesn't work. I get more concerned about negotiation by hostage taking, meaning we'll all be here until we get it done.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. All right. Well, I wouldn't want to play poker with Nancy Pelosi. That's for sure.